Beautiful. Okay. Looks like we're all ready to go now, and you can see my presentation, I believe. So I'm going to start off talking about the Atlas of Living Australia and digitization of biological collections. So as a starting point, there we go. As a starting point, there's a lot of different types of information in biological collections or associated with biological collections that we might actually want to digitize and expose. It can be as images, as simple as images, or as simple as databasing a collection record and putting that online, but it could be literature, it could be names, classifications, genetic information, it could be species interactions. All of these things are information that are associated with, well, with life, with biodiversity, that we might want to at some point digitize and put it online. Now, the Atlas really is about, what the Atlas is about is after people have digitized that information, we take it, we make it available, we expose it, we aggregate it, and hopefully add some value to it. And we have supported digitization activities through the process of our coming into existence. So what I'm going to do from the start is just give you a quick run-through of the Atlas and some of the things that it does with the information that we are provided by natural history collections, because the Atlas itself is a collaboration of partners, and we don't actually own any of the data ourselves. We merely aggregate it. But if you go to the Atlas, you can do many things. And if you think about the two things people probably most want to do, most people would like to do in terms of biodiversity information, the first would be to say, I want to know more about a certain species, and the second would be to say, what lives in this area? So starting off with species, I don't know if you can see the little arrow on the screen, but we could go and we could pick any Australian species and start to look at it and ask questions about it, expose data about it. So if you can see, I don't know if you can see my arrow, but here you go, we have a slide of a gang cockatoo. You can see a conservation status down here at the bottom left if there's something that we want to, you know, if it's endangered or vulnerable in any area, we want to know about it. It shows a static map based on the distributional records in the Atlas. You've got pictures of it. If you go to the gallery, you get lots of pictures. These pictures come from a variety of sources that we can put up. We have records. This shows all of the summary of the 38,000 records just for this one type of bird that we have in the Atlas. And we could actually, if you want, you can download all those records and start filtering them on various things. We have access to literature, mostly at this point through the BHL Biodiversity Heritage Library. Again, it's digital information that's online. And we link to names and classification. And these are super important, excuse me, super important in terms of biodiversity information. If we don't have these right, we really can't talk about things in any meaningful fashion. So we have the names, we have the classification. So that's the kind of thing about going and learning more about a species based on this information. The next thing we can do is start thinking about what lives where. What lives near me, what lives in a certain location. We could go to species by location and do a couple of things. The first thing we can do is explore your area. So you can come in and punch in any area. You can type it in. This is basically right next door to the Atlas headquarters. So these are all the records of everything that occurs within a 5-kilometer radius of where I'm sitting now in the Atlas headquarters. And as you can see, all species. There's almost 6,500 species that are sitting very close to me. And if I come in, I can now start filtering down on these things. For example, these are just the, if I click here, I get just the records for the 26 different species of reptiles seen here. If I were to come in and click on brown snake, for those of you that don't know it, this is the world's second deadliest snake. You can see it's right here. There's records of it all around where I'm sitting right now. So you can come in and start filtering down and any of this data that's here. We can also go back to all species and view all the records. And then we can actually download all the records, and you can see on the left, again, we can refine the results. We can start filtering them. Scientific name, species, family, life form. I'm going to filter in this case, you can see, on the state conservation status. So I can ask, are there any endangered species sitting around where I'm sitting right now? And yes, I could see that there's a whole list of them. So if someone's planning on putting a parking lot or building a new shopping mall or something in a given area, you can see that environmental impact reporting becomes very simple because you can come in and get a very quick idea of what's around you. Now we can do this around any given dot on a map, but we also have lots of regions that we can get in right from the beginning, and you could explore regions. You could look at our Australian states or territories, local government regions, biogeographic regions. We have marine regions in the atlas. If I were to come up and click in this area off the Great Barrier Reef, again, you can see not as many records here, only about 250,000 for this area, but 11,000 species. So you can see it's a very rich area, and we have the records for it. Once again, you can come in and you can filter all those records and start searching them in a variety of different ways. One of the things that really starts getting to be fun with the biodiversity data is when you can do things and start asking questions. We have the spatial portal within the atlas is actually pretty unique and advanced, and it allows us to do ask questions. It gives us mapping and analysis capability. I'm not going to go too deeply into it right now, but I'm just going to give you some examples of the type of thing it can do. So here I've used it to take the distribution of the koala bear, as you can see, and map those records now, run a Maxent predictive analysis of where it would be likely to found in 2030 based on current climate predictions. So I could use it to map how's climate change going to affect it. And if you look, there's a lot of dots right now of where the koala occurs now that really are going to be pretty suboptimum or marginal in the next 20 years. So this is just one of the types of tools in the atlas that you can play with. In this case, I've taken Kakadu. If you don't know it, it's one of Australia's most famous national parks. Mapped it out, asked for an area report, and now I've filtered some of that information. It shows just all the records for Kakadu with the various different life forms here. In this case, what I've done is I've asked for all the endangered species in Kakadu, filtered them by species name. You can see the different dots. And in this case, I've clicked on this rock python here as an endangered species. And because I've clicked on it, the records for that species have come up with circles around them. So again, it's a very quick way to come in and look at things and maybe make some analysis or predictions about what you might want to do. Here's just the orchids in Kakadu. I've sorted them by genus, and here are the two cymbidium are right there. So it gives you some of the options of the atlas and some of the things you can do once you've actually gone ahead and digitized the data. What the atlas then is really about is taking that data and giving people access to it to do cool things. Oh, just a final one. These are just all the records of everything in the kookaburra genus. There's more than one species. There's 2 species in here. So by throwing all the generic level records on a map and then filtering by species, you can see where the species fall out. Again, very simple mapping thing, but it's a good visualization. It's very easy for us to digitize, perhaps not from the collections, but to add citizen science type of records, people records. If you see something, here's a lizard that I saw in my backyard, take a picture of it, I could drop it in. If it has EXIF files, you can just actually pick up the time, the date, the location from the files. Otherwise, you can enter them yourself. Here, for example, you can see this is exactly where I saw it in my back garden. You can see if I was to move this little arrow around here, it would move the latitude and longitude. It's dynamic. And once I've done that, I just drop the record and it goes into the atlas. It's that simple. We have a mobile app, again, that allows us to act as a dynamic field guide to explore your area, but you can also record a sighting. Now, coming back to natural history collections and the digitization of them, which is to some extent the purpose of this talk, we can come in and look at the natural history collections. We now have over 500 data sets contributing data to the atlas, and 150 different biological collections are contributing data to the atlas. And you can filter in on any one of them and get more information about that. I'll show you that later. But it gives, we really are trying to support natural history collections. And in the atlas, there are now over 8 million records directly from biological collections, database records. One of the neat things, I won't go into it too much, but it's a good thing in terms of collections and how collections like using the atlas is we have a volunteer portal that lets people come in and get involved, and they're crowdsourcing the the databasing of specimens. And here, for example, you can come in, you can join a virtual expedition here. I could join this Australian Museum bivalve expedition, start transcribing, and they'll show me a picture of a specimen and the labels. It will have been a volunteer somewhere that's come in and done this imaging, and another volunteer through crowdsourcing will come online, actually type all this information in here, interpret here, and you get a database specimen. And people are coming online and doing this. And I actually, when they first started talking about this, I was wondering about whether they would actually get people to come in and do any of this. And to my amazement, to some extent, there have been almost 40,000 at this point, such tasks done of people coming in and transcribing. For the most part, there are specimens being databased, but there have also been some examples of people that have transcribed old handwritten field notebooks, so it's now character readable, optical character readable text. Now, the other thing I found really surprising, and to me very pleasing about this, here in Australia, is that certainly a couple of the expeditions that are going up right now are not Australian expeditions. We've had them from Finland. We're getting them increasingly from the States. It's a bit nice for us down here, down under, as they say, to come in and be doing something that no one else in the world is doing, and being able to support people at other major institutions that don't have such a capability. So we're quite happy with how this is working out for us. Now, I've alluded to it before, and this is why digitization is important. The atlas is only as good as the information that's in it. We don't own any data ourselves. This, as an example, this is the redback spider. Hopefully all of you people throughout the world will know of our redback spider. It's quite closely related to the black widow. It's one of our iconic venomous spiders. And if this map, if this really was a true map of the redback spider, instead of 5 or 6 dots, which is all the occurrences that are apparently known between here in Sydney, this entire map would be red. It's that common. It's one of the most common things around here. The quality, without the data in, people won't get the data out. So we need to find ways of coming in and populating the atlas and getting more information in. Now, there's different ways of doing this. One of the things we're doing is working with some of the people in the Australian National Fish Collection who are providing us with expert distributions. So here you can see with these shark species, these blue areas around Australia here are actually not records from the atlas. They're expert distributions as supplied to us by the people in the collections. Another type of digital information coming out of collections. And just as an example, here's the page for our famous great white shark. And if you were to look at the expert distribution up across the top of it, you'll see that it basically any water in southern Australia, these things are likely to be present. But if you look down at the lower map and look at the actual dots on the map that you come up when you actually get the records that are in the atlas, you'll see a lot of blank areas there, and a lot of areas where a person might think, oh, it's perfectly safe to go swimming here because there are no great whites around. So this is why it's important to get these expert distributions in or get a lot more data in. So in terms of the atlas actually supporting digitization, because we've done a fair amount of this working with the community, again, thinking of all the types of information that have come through the collections, we've done this in a lot of ways. Now we've been lucky, the atlas has been quite lucky in that it's had a fair bit of money come to it through the years to support various activities. So we've been able to help some of our partners. Now one of the things we've done is support the development of our national species lists. And again, repeating this is critical. In the same way that the previous talk discussed just how important GWIDs are in being able to uniquely identify any given specimen. If you don't get the names right, if there's confusion about names, you're not assigning information to a proper species name, everything falls apart. Getting your species lists correct is critical, and we've actually we've invested both in infrastructure and in content to get the species lists as good as we can. We've supported paying for digitization equipment within the collections, so we're actually helping people go out and get them the gear that they need to digitize. We've worked around developing the workflows for collections. We've looked at things like specialized or supplied infrastructure to help people with image management, the volunteer portal, getting the metadata tools right, and looking at species interactions. So we're thinking now and want to work towards creating a virtual museum environment for Australia where people could come in and explore images or specimens across several museums and collections, as well as looking at better citizen science applications. Now this is, sadly, it's a bit small. It's hard to see, but this is just as an example. Every page or collection, I picked the Australian National Insect Collection, but every data supplier in the atlas, every collection, everyone that supplies data will get a page that looks like this, that talks about who they are, gives a citation for them, the rights, the usage rights, but more importantly, it gives usage statistics. So it's a bit hard to read here, but what you can see is if you look at the total number of records in the atlas, there's a bit under 200,000 digitized records here coming out of Australian National Insect Collection. And if you look at usage statistics for the last 12 months, there 1.7 million records have been downloaded from the atlas. And so what this does is it enables someone like Beth Mantle, who's the manager, to go to her bosses, the people in the division, and say, whoa, do you know, you're not sure about whether digitization is worthwhile, but do you know that in the last year, every record in ANIC on average has been downloaded over 8 times for people to use. And here's a list of what people are using it for. So it's biodiversity research, it's environmental monitoring, it's conservation. And this actually is a way of giving back to the people that are contributing data and giving them some metrics that they can then go and use to show, quantify the impact of their collections. And I think this is an important thing we do. Now, to kind of, having gone through a brief rundown and come back and give a bit of a summary now of what we're doing, we're being used quite a bit. We're being used, as you can see, in a whole range of activities, from research to collection management, conservation, environmental monitoring, education and outreach, all kinds of things that we're being used for. We're hold our heads up in government in terms of people that are giving us money and asking how we're doing, and we're actually now being increasingly used by different departments in government to manage and deliver biodiversity information. So we actually, when we started, we had a bit of a mission, which was to develop this authoritative, freely accessible, distributed, and federated biodiversity data system. And you know, we were given, through the years, we've been given about $40 million to do it. So we are a collaboration of partners. Just a couple points that need to be made. We don't own data, we aggregate it, but everything in the atlas is open source and freely available. You don't have to pay to use it, and more importantly, it's all built on open source software. It's all freely available. Just to stress that we are partners, a bunch of people involved in the atlas, and just to stress that we didn't just wake up one morning and come up with an idea that nobody else had thought of. There's been a lot of groundwork in Australia in biodiversity informatics, so this just some, I'd like to point out that we didn't just come up with it. We're building on the work of others, and we're playing in the global environment. We are not doing this on our own. We're the Australian portal of GBIF, and we're collaborating with a variety of other people throughout the world that have similar type of thinking. Now, just briefly as an end, some of our accomplishments, I'm not going to go through all of these, but we're now delivering 40 million species occurrence records, which is pretty good. But more exciting, over 500 million records have been downloaded from the atlas. People are using the information in the atlas, and they're using it to support a variety of activities. But what I want to talk to at the very end, these bottom 2 points, is that we are providing open infrastructure that's available for use by others, and we provide the ability for others to leverage off this substantial investment that we've made down here. So we can support collection digitization efforts, and we can aggregate and expose collections information and hopefully get them some metrics back to show people are using it and help them. But we can also we have pretty robust infrastructure, and we can be used to create national or regional biodiversity portals throughout the world. At this point, there is a requirement that countries have under the CBD, that many countries do create national level portals, and maybe not all of them have the resources to do it. Well, we've done it pretty well, and we've done it on open source software, which we are more than happy to make available. We're working with excuse me, a couple of different countries right now, Costa Rica, New Zealand, to try and move the Atlas offshore and let people take it up at a fraction of what we pay to do it, and certainly a very small proportion of what they'd have to do if they did it themselves. So we're more than happy for people to talk to us around any of these subjects. So thanks very much at this point, and I'm open for a couple questions before I go, but get in touch with me if you want to know any more information.
Okay, thanks, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, great. Thank you. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions from the floor.
Versus enters a record for species XY database. Does this record get validated and checked at some stage?
Okay, so we do have an online question, John,
Yep.
from Klaas Damkin. If a private person enters a record for a species XY into the database, does this record get validated at some stage?
Yes and no. So what we do is we have over 40 different automatic data cleaning tools that look at every record in the Atlas, and it would pick up outlier problems and things like this automatically and then attach them to the record. But we don't have people that then go back and verify it in another way. But what we do, which is I think more important, is we do not assess the quality of the data in the Atlas. We provide the user with the ability to make that choice themselves and include or exclude any data that they wish to or any data sets in their analysis. So I could come in and say, I'm going to do an analysis, but I only want museum records or records from Birds Australia. I don't want citizen science records. I don't want any records from the Australian National Insect Collection. And you can include or exclude whatever you want based on what you think of the quality of that data. So you have the opportunity to hopefully assess the data for fitness of use for what you're doing and include